Hi guys, welcome back to Golden Reviewer. So in front of me, I have three devices, and these are supposedly the phones with the best camera system. So the first one is iPhone 14 Pro Max, and the one in the middle is Google Pixel 7 Pro. And then lastly, we have the Galaxy S22 Ultra. And today we are actually going to do a camera comparison between these three devices. For those of you who have been following my Twitter, I think you have seen this comparison already. We have 14 rounds of comparison, and for each round I made a vote without reviewing the device first, right? So it's a blind test. But today we are going to aggregate all those photos and the results and put everything into this video for those who don't follow me on Twitter. But I strongly suggest you to do so. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into the comparisons. Okay, so here we have our very first set of samples. It's an ultra wide. It's a nice street view of London. And just to remind you that all the photos will follow the order of iPhone 14 Pro Max, Pixel 7 Pro, and S22 Ultra from left to right. So for you, this is not a blind test. You know exactly which device took which photo, all right? So for this set of photo, it's clear that the Samsung is actually the most vibrant and most eye-pleasing one. And iPhone is pretty dull, and Pixel is somewhere in between. In terms of detail, they all look pretty similar, and for highlight preservation, I think the S22 is slightly better because of the colors are retained. Now for the vote results. In this round, the Pixel 7 gets the most number of votes, so it seems that most people like something more natural, more in between. It's not as dull as the iPhone, also not as vibrant, or somebody call it fake, as the Samsung. Alright, so let's move on to the next comparison. Here is a set of very beautiful telephoto photos of a rainbow on Loch Ness. Here we see that the Samsung is still the most vibrant one. And just to remind you again, the order is iPhone, Pixel, and Samsung. Then if we look at the details, the Samsung is apparently the most detailed one because of the 10x optical zoom. And the Pixel is pretty disappointing here. It seems quite similar to the iPhone's performance, where it has only 3x zoom compared to the Pixel's 5x. So for the vote results, most people prefer a more colorful and more vibrant rainbow, it seems. So in this round, Samsung get the most number of votes. Our next set of photos is taken on Isle of Skye. It's again a high dynamic range theme. It's taken with the ultra wide lens. Right? Here it seems that the Pixel is rendering the most accurate colors. HDR seems slightly better on Samsung, and then in terms of detail after zoom in, the Pixel is the worst of them all. Okay, so for voting result, people prefer the nicer color on the Pixel 7 Pro, followed by Samsung, with iPhone getting the least number of votes. Our round 4 is a night scene, and here Pixel 7 Pro is giving a super bluish hue, which most people don't like, I think. And the Samsung and iPhone are pretty similar, with the Samsung being slightly warmer here. And then for details, the Pixel is not as good as iPhone and the Samsung. It's pretty soft, and we see a lot of artifacts. Then for HDR, Samsung is still the best. Here is actually a very close call because the iPhone and Samsung are really similar, but the Samsung has ever so slightly more number of votes here. So it's a win for the Samsung. Round 5 is a mid-range zoom, which means 3x on Samsung and iPhone and 5x on Pixel. Here we see that the Samsung renders color in a super dramatic way, and it really makes people appreciate the beauty of nature. I think most people here will never care which one is accurate, which one is not. They'll just agree that the Samsung photo is actually amazing. Then in terms of detail, we see that the Pixel is actually the best because it's using the 5x zoom compared to 3x for the other two devices. And indeed, for the voting result, most people choose the Samsung here because it's really beautiful, and there is no argument against that. For round 6 is again a net shot from the main lens. It's Actually, the Samsung here has a slightly pinkish hue to it, which I think most people will not like. Then the Pixel and iPhone looks quite similar if you don't zoom in, but after zooming in, you realize that the Pixel's detail preservation is really terrible, right? It's very soft, and it just does not have a lot of detail. So here, the iPhone takes the lead, followed by Samsung, and Pixel got the least number of votes. Round 7 is a set of photos taken on the ultra-wide angle, and this can be considered a mild low-light scene. So here the S22's color is just very nice, right? You see the warm color from all the lights, and then even after you zoom in, you see that the S22 Ultra managed to preserve the most amount of details. So here, no surprise, most people vote for the S22 Ultra. It got the most number of votes for its color rendition as well as the detail preservation. Our next set of photo is a test for the color as well as white balance at dusk. And here the iPhone is actually having a slight issue with the exposure. The foreground is a little bit too dark for most people's liking. And then for the color, I think the Pixel 7 Pro is doing the best. The S22 Ultra is still having a sort of pinkish hue, which is not very pleasant. Then for details, it seems that the Samsung is a little bit soft in this set of comparisons. So here, the Pixel got the most number of votes, and the lead is pretty huge over the other two devices. Our next set of comparison is again a test for the color and white balance, and I think here the Pixel 7 Pro is really doing well. The buildings are having a very pleasant color, whereas in the iPhone and Samsung shot, they have a very apparent bluish hue. And then for detail preservation, it seems that Samsung is still slightly behind. And here the Pixel 7 Pro again got the most number of votes. Our next set of photos is actually taken with 3x zoom. So it means that the Pixel 7 Pro has to use AI zoom because it does not have a 3x dedicated lens. And then Samsung is actually having this foggy feel in the photo. You can see that everything is a little bit, the photo is just not as clear or as sharp as the other two. But to be honest, that's what the real scene look like, right? So it seems that most people don't really care. They just choose whichever one is more, say, Instagrammy or social media ready. Like, although the Samsung is the most accurate here, but we have to admit that it's not eye-pleasing. So here it got the least amount of votes, and that is to the surprise of no one. Here is nighttime zoom with 10x. So iPhone does not have 10x, so it's zooming out from 3x and it looked terrible. Pixel 7 Pro, on the other hand, is zooming from 5x and it's actually looking very nice. To be honest, if I don't zoom in, I can't really tell which one is from Pixel and which one is from Samsung. But upon zooming in, you can still see that the Samsung managed to capture a little bit more detail. So here, most people voted for Samsung, but we still have 1% of people who actually voted for iPhone. What are you thinking? Next up is another nighttime shot on the main lens. And here we see that the iPhone is still having a problem with the highlight preservation. It's doing overexposure all over the place. And Samsung is over sharpening the windows, as you can see here. And then the Pixel is actually having this halo effect around the buildings. So none of them is perfect. But here we still see that Pixel 7 Pro got the most number of votes. Actually, I don't really understand this result. Maybe it just looks nice. I don't know. Next up is Greenwich Park, and it's taken during the dusk time, so the sun is very warm and everything was golden. It was super beautiful. Here, a lot of people actually complain that the Samsung shot looks fake, looks oversaturated. But actually, I want to say that I was there, right? I was there in person. And from my own memories, the scene was actually more saturated than the Samsung's photo. It was so colorful, it was so beautiful. None of these photos could precisely represent that scene, right? Here the pixel is really struggling, the white balance is not correct, and everything looks super washed out. Then the iPhone and Samsung are pretty okay. But in terms of detail, the pixel is better because it's taken on the 5x. So in this round, the Samsung still got the most number of votes, despite some complaints about oversaturation or fake colors. People still like this kind of eye-pleasing photos. Our last set of comparison is actually this ultra-wide shot of Mealtfalls on Isle of Skye. In here, I think the Samsung just look that bit more vibrant. The rainbow is a little bit more visible in the Samsung shot as well. And if you look at the grass, it's quite washed out on iPhone, but it's quite well represented on Samsung. Then the Pixel 7 Pro is having a little bit of detail problems here and there. I think it's the HDR algorithm messing up. So in this last round, most people voted for Samsung, followed by Pixel, and lastly iPhone. Right, time for results. So thanks for all my Twitter followers who voted for all these 14 rounds. We got around 20,000 votes in total. And out of the 20,000 votes, Samsung S22 Ultra got 8.1K. The Pixel 7 Pro was not far behind at 7.7K. But when it comes to the iPhone 14 Pro Max, it only got 3.9K votes, which is about half of the Pixel or Samsung. So that's a pretty low number. But if we look at the rankings, it seems that the Samsung is still taking the lead. It has 7 first, 6 second, and only 1 last place. Whereas for the Pixel 7 Pro, we have 5 first, 4 second, and it has 5 last place. For the iPhone 14 Pro Max, it's not looking good. It only came on top in 2 rounds, and then 4 rounds it was the second place, and then in 8 rounds it was voted the worst photo. From my own experience, the nice thing about S22 Ultra is really its versatility as well as its reliability, right? So you can count on it most of the time, from ultra wide all the way to 10x zoom, even 30x zoom. It will deliver a decent result most of the time. And many times it's even just ready for sharing on social media. You don't have to do Photoshop or any tweaks. It just looks nice out of the camera, right? And for the Pixel 7 Pro, it can do wonders sometimes, but other times it may make you very disappointed. Like it really mess up here and there. And then for the iPhone, I mean, overall, it's really time for Apple to do something about the cameras because it's really lagging behind. Alright guys, so that's all for today's video. Really thank you for watching, and see you next time.